think the first time you and I ever speak is about 6 months before that move to Celtic. And we had a very interesting conversation. Do you want to talk us through it?
Well, yeah. I mean, you are. Yeah, well, you're allowed to talk. Am I allowed to talk about that now?
Yeah,
are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You tried to sell me out for Rangers, didn't you? And at that point, it was kind of like through Walter sort of asking the question, and for me, it was kind of like at that point, I'm not going to get the call from Celtic after what's just happened. Certainly not. That's just in the reality of how you think. That there's no way they're going to come calling for you. Rangers did come calling, and it was like, well, I'm at Motherwell right now. I need to grow as a player. I need to, if I want to get better. What a wonderful opportunity to play in European football and a chance to win trophies at that time. And it was something that was of interest for me, absolutely. But, good things come to those who wait, and everything happens for a reason, they say, don't they? At that point, it wasn't meant to be. Motherwell didn't want it to happen.
No, I've got to say, Scott, do you think if that conversation doesn't take place, if, this is Rangers trying to find out if, this mad Celtic fan, Aussie, would consider making the move. Obviously, the story gets out. It goes right down to the 11th hour on transfer deadline day. It doesn't happen. Do you think Celtic happens if all that doesn't happen? Do you think Celtic would have come in for you if they didn't, if it wasn't for the fact that they knew Rangers would try to sign?
No, I don't. Do you believe that?
No, I think that's exactly what happened. I think that Peter Lawwell saw an opportunity and just went straight in there and thought, I'm not going to let that happen to us. And so he made sure that he went in and got you.
Well, let's be real. If you're looking at history at that point, there was many of those signings, neck and neck, toe to toe with both clubs. Scott Brown, Kevin Thompson, Chris Killen, Derek Reardon, Scott McDonald. There was many. There was many at that point that it was neck and neck for both clubs to make sure that they didn't miss out on some of the local talent that was in Scottish football at that point. So I think it was definitely a turning point that made Celtic turn their heads and go, are we going to let that happen? And I think my performances against Celtic when Gordon was there, and that was the reason why, though, that they did come calling. It wasn't just because Rangers were interested. It was because of the performances that I had played. And look, speaking thereafter, there was one game we played Celtic in a League Cup semi-final at Hampden. We lost 2-1 on the night. And I remember, Steve McManus told me thereafter, when obviously I went to Celtic, but Steve McManus played as a right-sided centre-half that night. And deliberately Gordon played him there because I was always, which looking back, yes, I did, always used to drift to the left-hand side and cut in and scored a lot of goals from that area. When I was at Motherwell, used to drift in the channels there and then try and, be 1v1 with fullbacks or centre-backs and try and take you on from there. So he wanted a left-footed player to play on the right side of, right centre-back, which is rare. But it was because he knew that I was going to cause the biggest threat of coming in and cutting inside. So that's a level of respect that you don't see all the time in Scottish football with a lesser football club. I didn't really take that in at the time, but obviously that shows you, if you were to look back at things at that game, that was the case. And they were the reasons. Gordon had already sort of looked at me and sounded me out as well. So I think that was just the pinnacle of it. The pushing point was obviously, the tipping point was then that Rangers had already tried to jump in before that. I think Celtic were in mind of it, or Gordon was at least. But I think then that made the decision for him. And I still think it's one of the oddest transfers because I had 2 years left on my deal, and a deal was done and agreed in March time for a transfer fee, which realistically, guys, that doesn't happen. Usually happens at the end of a season. But I'd already signed the pre-agreement in the March time to go to Celtic, which is, it's not really heard of, really.